is actually fueled majorly by Galamsey. It's an interesting concept.
Regrettably.
How are we able to tell, though? I've always thought that Galamsey was an informal activity. How are we able to measure it in our growth?
I won't have the economic engineering office measurement, but you normally have what we call overall GDP, which is a function of how various sectors of the economy contribute to the growth of the economy. One would have thought that in Ghana, agriculture must lead the growth of the economy. Then you have manufacturing, you have the fishery subsector. Given the agrarian nature of the Ghanaian economy, this must be the drivers of growth in our country. So if you find it in Galamsey, which is mining and construction, ideally it has always made some contribution. So maybe they will weigh it against, if agric did 5% and Galamsey did 6%, economically they will conclude that Galamsey contributed more to the GDP.
But how do we know that it's not legal?
No, I'm sure this is evidence coming from
price
the
of gold
statistical
has gone
service. That can be part of it. And the returns on gold too, given the volumes that we have produced, have also gone up. No thanks to illegal mining. You are producing more illegally and exporting more illegally. So that has contributed to the GDP growth better than the other major sectors of the economy.
One of the things that came out quite clearly in the reading of the budget was how innovative the government is seeking to be in, finding sources of funding. Clever way of funding free SHS by uncapping the get fund.
Yes.
And absorbing the Dachi bond so that get fund is free to do more infrastructure work, and then of course the uncapped amount can cover free SHS and the education of persons with disabilities. Some nice thinking outside the box, over there. But in spite of all of this, we still have some 56 billion that we are going to spend, which, we can't afford. That's our deficit.
For a developing economy, you can anticipate that. But the sense of this budget is fiscal discipline and fiscal prudence. So it's more on expenditure cut and increased revenue mobilization. I thought that listening to Honorable Atuforsen, these are the two legs he's seeking to work on. Now, if you take specifically the education sector, it's a good beginning and a good start. One, to uncap get fund, and two, to absorb Dachi bond bills as part of government national public debt to free the resources, and then three, to dedicate get fund to the financing of free senior high school. Now that may not be enough, but at least a good beginning. If you take the free senior high school bill, you are talking of 3.7 to 4 billion annually. That is what we require to finance free tertiary education. At the time President Akufo-Addo announced it subsequent to campaign, there was no strategy or thinking as to how it was to be financed. So you notice that dedicated financing, if you examine annual budget funding amount, the ABFA of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, about 70% of that resources went into financing free senior high school. The original thought of the framers of that law was that dedicate oil revenue and its returns into building robust infrastructure. That is what President Mahama and Honorable Atuforsen are seeking to do. So that now ABFA, you spend it more on infrastructure. So that's why he's pushing that to the big push. Now, Get Fund, traditionally and primarily was to finance tertiary education and to complement financing of tertiary education, not to supplement it. I mean, I was at the forefront with some of you in the universities when we advocated strongly for the establishment of the Get Fund, including even what is now part of this lotto tax and other issues. It was a demand. If you remember, together with call sharing, I hear Professor Adai Mensah and Professor Essie Sutherland were at the forum yesterday. I was seeking to hear from experts what their thoughts are in terms of what we should do to guarantee equitable, quality, free senior high school education. And probably even here, let me tease out something. If you are from BCA, going into free senior high school, couldn't we have a cutoff point that if you don't do well, you are not performing well, on the basis of assessment, must you necessarily qualify for government support? Because what happens to assessment as a measure? You can't have a train that everybody is sitting in the train from the start to the end. At least somewhere along the line, based on competencies, skills, value, and hard working, which has to be rewarded, you'll be able to appreciate that. So get fun. And I share this with the public so that tomorrow one is not blamed. You are now looking at about 330,000 free senior high school students graduating to have access to tertiary education. How prepared are we as a country? Have you expanded infrastructure in the universities, the polytechnics, and other tertiary institutions to make room for the exponential increase in persons who are now accessing free senior high school education? You have to necessarily anticipate and expand infrastructure, teaching halls, lecture theaters, accommodation, and others, in order that it can absorb them. Other than that, you're producing about 150 to 200,000 every year for the street. That will add to your social problems as a country. So the Honorable Minister for Finance has done well, and capping get fund, at least it frees resources. You have about 3.5 billion. That is just about what you need. As we speak today, we have to get some releases in order to secure food for free senior high school student. That is part of it. But we have just completed the national dialogue on the future and state of education in Ghana. I should be receiving the report from Professor Odro and the chairman of the National Education Forum Planning Committee sometimes around 28th March. Then it becomes a blueprint that will present to President Mahama to guide what interventions he needs to do to improve and ensure equity and quality education at all levels.
Right. If you just joined us, we're talking